There's a story that goes that one day back in China, there was a king, King Helu of the kingdom of Wu. And during the time of King Helu, there was an invading army, a big invading army. And during this time, King Helu had a big dilemma, right? He had a problem. And his problem is, how would he stop a bigger invading army from taking over the kingdom of Wu? Now here's the thing, he found out that there's a general that was very known for his strategic tactics in warfare, right? So before he wanted to hand off the entire army, the kingdom's army, to this person, he wanted to test them. So he called this person into the palace, and this person's name was Sun Tzu. He then asked Sun Tzu, how would you defeat this bigger army? And then Sun Tzu replied, he said, I will use, discipline, strategy. And then the king asked him, show me what you can do. The king assigned Sun Tzu, how would you turn my concubines, for example, into an army that's fit to fight and ready to go ahead and go up against this bigger, badder army? So what Sun Tzu did is, first thing, he organized the concubines, and then he picked the top 2 concubines, and then he said, top 2 concubines, please step forward, and then underneath you have your own group, right? So you are the leaders, and then underneath you have this your own troop, right? What he then did next is he gave them clear instructions. He said that discipline will win us the war, and then following instructions is key to that. So here's what I want you to do. If I beat the drum once, you hold the sword in this position. If I beat the drum twice, you move into this attack position. Very clear instructions. So he looked at the ladies, he looked at the girls, and they were giggling, they were laughing. Yeah, okay. So Sun Tzu said, clear instructions, let's get started. He then asked the drummer, okay, first command. They beat the drum once. What happens with the concubines? Guess what they do? They giggle, not obeying it, right? Sun Tzu gives the next order. Beat the drum twice. Boom, boom. Beat it twice. They're supposed to go into the second position. What did the girls do? Again, same thing, laughing, giggling, right? Like nothing's happening. So what did Sun Tzu say? What did he do? He then asked both the leaders come in front of him, and then he said, because the instructions were clear and you did not follow them, it's your fault, right? That you're not executing. So what he did is he took his sword and boom, boom, straight, decapitated them. Wild times back in the day. Of course, the emperor was furious, but he knew what Sun Tzu wanted to instill in the army, and he saw the value in that. So what happened next? Sun Tzu calls on to the next highest ranking concubines and gives them the same order. You're now the next 2 leaders managing your troops. He repeated the instructions. First beat of the drum, get in position. Second beat of the drum, get in this attack position, right? He organized them, he gave the command, boom, beat of the drum. 1 beat of the drum, guess what they did? They got in position. Boom, 2 beats of the drum, they move into the attack position. So, as you can see in that story of delegation, a very important lesson we can pick up from that story is that in delegation or in war, right, in business, if you have a team and you give them clear instructions, clear steps, clear guidelines, and they do not follow it, it's the fault of the team, the subordinates. Now, if you do not give clear instructions, if it's vague, if they don't know what they're doing, and then you expect a lot from them, it's the fault of the general. Taking away those lessons from the story, you can also apply this into your own business, your own hiring, your own delegation. And this is one core concept that I've used in mastering delegation, especially working with remote team members. Because here's what's happening. With the remote work environment, it's easy for your team members to get distracted. It's easy for them to not comply. It's easy for them to not deliver on results. But the key consideration is that, are you also giving the right instructions? So before you put the blame on your team, assess yourself first. If you're giving the right instructions, if it's clear, concise, easy to follow, and then if you're supporting them afterwards, right? So that's the story of Sun Tzu. It really helps out in the mastering the art of delegation. In the next part of this video, I'm actually going to walk you through the steps on how to do that so you can implement it effectively in growing your online business or building a side hustle for you to be able to retire early. If you're ready, let's jump in. All right, so effective delegation pretty much comes down to 7 steps. And in my experience building a team of 75 online virtual assistants and now managing 13 team members remotely, I've used this exact same process in order to successfully delegate small tasks up to higher level tasks to then help me free up my time to then do higher level activities that can compensate me at a higher level as well. So let's get started. Step number 1 is know your ideal outcome. So if you think about this is almost like a reverse engineering mission. So step 1 is know what you want out of this. Even before that, obviously, you want to list out all of the tasks that you're doing repetitively and then maybe rank them on level of difficulty. So once you have that list, then you write out the ideal outcome that you want from each specific task. For example, if you're doing lead generation and one of the tasks that you do perform every day, researching prospects and reaching out to prospects, that's something that you can list out as an activity. Prospect research, prospect outreach, maybe prospect follow-up. And then that alone can be something that you can start delegating. Before you even get started, you don't have a baseline. So the outcome that you want to measure, for example, are your leading indicators like how many outreach messages you send per day or how many proposals you send a day. So in that sense, ideally, I wanted 10 to 15 new messages being sent out to my ideal prospects. And then I wanted follow-up messages to go out every 2 or 3 days to touch base and make sure that they're in the pipeline. They're feeding the pipeline. So that was step number 1, knowing your ideal outcome. Step number 2 is knowing what it needs to be done in order to get that ideal outcome. If we go back to the first example, for example, lead generation. I want to generate calls, right? So sending 10, 15 messages a day. What needs to be done for that to happen? First off, I need to go into my LinkedIn profile. I need to go into my search and find different prospects, right, that are ideal. And then if they are a good fit, I would then connect with them and then I would send them a message. I'd reach out. So those are the steps. So it takes me about 3 to 5 minutes to do this each lead or prospect, and then I've documented the steps. I've also documented the type of prospect I'm going after, and also I've documented the message that I'm sending to this prospect, and then how I'm now labeling them and tagging them in order to know that I've already reached out to them. Knowing that, I can now do this, rinse and repeat. I'll do this 10, 15 times, and then 5 minutes. That would then turn into 50 minutes, for example, for 10 prospects, or about an hour and 20 minutes for 15 prospects, for example. So now that I have the ideal outcome, and then I know the steps that I need to do in order to get that ideal outcome, I can move on to step number 3. It's now laying out these steps in a list. So this is when you build your SOP, your standard operating procedure, laying out the steps of what needs to be done in order to achieve that outcome. So list out the steps. Log into LinkedIn, open up Sales Navigator, search for the candidate, validate the prospect, send a connection message, and tag the prospect. So now you've listed out those steps, and then you've added resources in there so we can track it. Now you can go on to step number 4, which is you would now test out these delegation steps. So now that you have the steps, let's assume you already have somebody in place, an assistant maybe, or a remote admin that you hand this off to. What you do is go through the steps with them and actually show them how it's done. So what I like to do is jump on a call with anybody that I'm training, and then I show them the steps by me doing it first, giving them that SOP document, right? And then showing them how it's done. And then I watch them do it. Me watching them do it allows them to ask me questions and clarifications if they're not confident in the execution of the task. So by doing this, you're able to oversee and make sure that they're doing it right and that they have the confidence of doing it moving forward. So that's how you initially test out that delegation SOP to your team member. Step number 5 is what happens next, right? So now you want to track your KPIs or your key performance indicators. So when you're doing any sort of campaign, you want it to be based out of a target and a goal. In this case, the example we mentioned above, one of our leading KPIs is the outreach messages per day. So over a time frame of, let's say, 1 week, you would want to measure how many messages were sent per day, how many positive responses came back, negative responses, neutral responses. And then from that data, how many from the positive responses and neutral responses, how many of those then turned into interested leads or prospects, booking a call or requesting more information, or how many people said no, and then is it a bigger percentage of people saying no, people saying yes? You can then adjust your approach, right? But you want to keep track of these KPIs in order to move on to the next step of your delegation, which is adding a time frame for testing. When you're doing any campaigns, again, you want to give it enough time to give you statistical relevant data. What do I mean by that? What you don't want to do is delegate and change things way too fast that you don't get accurate feedback from the market. So when you're delegating, part of it is creating a schedule, for example, of testing out 2 variables and then giving it enough time in order for you to see the results and then make more intelligent decisions in your next delegation step. The last bit goes back to the optimization, because what I like to do with my own delegation is provide rewards, right, and performance bonuses on achieving targets. We base our work out of achieving targets for clients. I also like to give the responsibility and also allow your team member to come up with ideas in order to really hit those targets, and also help out with, making things more efficient in general. Creating a reward system that gives them some sort of bonus on achieving KPIs. I've found that really helps in creating, motivated team members that really perform and also bring their A game. So that's it. 7 steps for you guys to master the art of remote delegation. And if you have questions, if you have any other insights, any other steps you'd like to add, feel free to drop it in the comments below. And remember, before you even make that first step, remember the story of Sun Tzu. You either give clear directions or you get not so good results, right? So remember Sun Tzu. And until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.